Councillor Robinson, we're now live on YouTube.
Okay, good evening and warm welcome to everyone at Rushcliffe Borough Council for our February Cabinet meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that the Cabinet meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authority Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information, England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of such images or sound recordings is under Council control. Cabinet will be considering an exempt item 14, endorsement of the East Midlands Freeport for business case. For that part of the meeting, the public will be excluded and the live stream on the YouTube will end. Okay, apologies for absence.
No apologies this evening.
Thank you. Declaration of interest. I could have a proposal and a second to accept the minutes of the previous meeting, January 2022. Proposed by Councillor Eddy, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those in favour? Any citizens' questions?
No citizens' questions this evening.
In terms of opposition, with these questions, good evening to Councillor Walker. If you'd like now to ask your question, thank you.
Good evening. How will Cabinet lobby this government for clarity after years of budget uncertainty regarding business rates, new homes bonus, and the huge delays to the fair funding review?
Well, just to clarify your question to start with, Cabinet doesn't lobby, but the council does. So the council will continue lobbying, but we can't, we're just the Cabinet. We currently, as a council, liaise with stakeholders such as the Local Government Association and the District Council Network to work with government to ensure there is more certainty with regard to local government finance and areas of funding reform. And in the question, the delays you refer to have been caused by the 2019 general election and the impact of COVID, which has massively impacted the social and economic landscapes in the past 2 years.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Walker?
Yes, I do. So in the government's own levelling up paper, inequity is mentioned 35 times and states that market forces cannot simply be left to their own devices. So will council describe what levelling up will look like for Rushcliffe's residents and businesses?
Right, I think I might need to.
Sorry, can I just do that, Councillor Walker? I don't think that's a supplementary question relates to business rates. So there's a
the new funding that's coming through,
So,
local
I
government
think
funding.
that's something that would accept today.
We could bore you for a couple of hours on levelling up, but it is a separate question, as Councillor Robinson said.
As well, is there anything else you'd like to ask a supplementary question? Obviously, it needs to be related to your first question.
Yeah, well, with the issue of funding. And then
Business
levelling up
rates, isn't it?
kind
Your
of,
first
well,
one, your own
it's
bonus,
business
wasn't
rates,
it?
new homes bonus and the fair funding review. So it's to do with the policy that's coming into local government in terms of funding. And what that means, because the paper has been released this week.
Well, funding of local government is a huge subject. Business rates have supposedly been under review for the last how many years? 5 years, and still haven't been sorted out yet. We're waiting for them to be sorted out. Whether that's going to happen in the short term, I wouldn't like to guess. New homes bonus, we're basically going from year to year. We're saying we're going to get it next year. I think you'll hear in my report it's worth something like 1.7 million. Whether that's going to carry on in the future, I really don't know. And that's why budgets are flexible. And that's why budgets change. And some of the things you'll hear me say later are different to probably what you heard me say this time last year. So, I mean, local government funding isn't straightforward. The only bit that really is straightforward is the council tax side of it and the income that we get from our investments. So it's a bit of a rambling answer to your question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Appreciate your time tonight. Okay, moving on to item 6, which is the future delivery model for the grounds maintenance and street cleaning services. This is an item that I will take now. So back in 2014, Rushcliffe decided to set up Streetwise to deliver its main contract and its services, street cleaning, with two entities, Streetwise and Environment Limited, Streetwise Private Limited, the Technical company, which obviously is under European legislation and how it delivers contracts and the parameters around it. The ambitions at that time was to make it a social enterprise company. Franchising was also an ambition across the country, and also to operate really in commercial markets as they expanded. But the main core and the focus of Streetwise was always to fulfil the main core contract for the council or recognise. To oversee the setting up of Streetwise Environmental was a cross-party member group, and that was in operation for quite a long time. And after their recommendations and the work they did through there, these companies were actually launched. The main contract to the council was extended in 2018 to take it to August 2022. It's fair to say during the period of Streetwise, it has been incredibly challenging. The office moved to Bingham. There was a change in leadership. And of course, over the last 2 years, it has suffered like every other business with the pandemic. There was also the loss of the major contract of metropolitan housing as well, which was quite a blow to Streetwise. And one of the other challenges for the companies was big changes in the market, the way in which services are delivered, services are won, and again that has been incredibly for Streetwise. So with the renewal of the contract due for August 2022, that this council commissioned an independent report, which is mentioned in the paper, called Curlake. They're a third party there, as I said, they were independent, and they looked at the full picture of Streetwise, reviewing their operations and looking at whether the two options, should it, in terms of contract, should it actually be extended, should it be in-house, and basically looking at what really would be the best value for money for the taxpayer. The outcome of the report, again, is mentioned in the item, and Cabinet and the officers basically considered the case for insourcing Streetwise against the extension of the main contract. In doing this, we reviewed business plans that were put forward for Streetwise, and as I said, we took into account particularly the factors that had a big impact on Streetwise itself, as I mentioned before. But the absolute core of this review was the core contract. We believe as Cabinet members that this was the absolute top priority, that we Streetwise provides the very, very best service to our residents, make sure that we are very proud of them, continue the very high standards. We also looked at the financial costs and implementations, and they are referenced in section 7.1 and in appendix C. Consequently, based on this review, we bring this paper tonight with the recommendations that are set out on page 7 and 8, and that is to bring Streetwise in-house. I want to stress that this point, this is absolutely no reflection on the management team, staff, who have done a terrific job, incredibly challenging and difficult circumstances. Particularly, I'd like to pay a huge amount of credit to the managing director and board of Streetwise, who can navigate this company with incredibly choppy waters. But we believe that it's absolutely now that we recommend this evening that we do make very decisive and strong action to ensure the very best chance that the core contract is delivered in very, very high quality. We believe it's in the interest of residents across this borough, value for the taxpayer. Streetwise now is insourced and put by the council. So I would like to move the recommendations which are set out on page 7 and 8 in the report. That was it on that. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry. When you stand up.
Yeah, I'm happy to say this hasn't been an easy decision. A lot of work and debate has taken place before arriving at this recommendation. The loss of a major contract and the vagaries of this market and partly brought about the decision to bring Streetwise in-house. It's a decision I support, and I'm happy to second the recommendations.
I think I'd just like to add it on, within the recommendations, it doesn't actually, 65B is requested that the Cabinet for Environment and Safety provides oversight on this project. Certainly last some time ahead to make sure that's as seamless as possible, bringing it in there. There's obviously a lot of work into the legalities, and that is what provides obviously monitoring as well to take care of those. But as the more said, I believe this is absolutely the best interests of our residents. It has been a very difficult decision. It's one that's taken a huge amount of time, both in officers and the Cabinet itself. We believe it is absolutely very best. Any other comments anyone would like to make? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Can I just say that my experience and the feedback that I've had has always been extraordinarily positive about the work that the guys on the ground do in Streetwise, and I have every confidence that we'll continue that very high level of customer service that we've got used to, and I think we've the outfit.
Absolutely. I think one of the important points to raise in terms of is that the government and SIPFA, the financial bodies, are also really giving new sort of directions of where they want councils to go with their own companies. There's obviously been some fairly very difficult situations with councils owned companies recently, with severe impact on the actual running of the council. Now, Streetwise is profitable, and it has run incredibly well, and certainly has not had any detriment in this authority. But obviously, we must be very mindful of government policy, sit for guidelines in terms of financing, and ensuring that going forward that we are minimising risk both to the council and also to the taxpayer. To make this stage. Any other points? And so recommendations that I've set out there on page 7, the A to G, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7, the budget and financial strategy for 2022-2023. Councillor Moore.
This budget is one designed to move on from the impact of COVID and the financial challenges we have been through, and which in parts we are still facing. It's a positive budget which is focused on economic recovery and growth within the borough, while supporting the most vulnerable in our community. Budget in comparison to last year has less COVID support and a more encouraging outlook towards levels of income. One issue which we have had to seriously consider this year is the effect of inflation, staff pay, cost of supplies and services, particularly utility and fuel costs, an issue we're all aware of. Business rates have not yet been reformed, and we still await this. But one simple example shows how we are affected by appeals from our larger payers. In this case, the power station. Following a successful appeal, their business rates were reduced from 2.9 million to 1.6 million, quite a difference. But however, we've been aware of this risk, and prudent provisions have been made over the years to absorb this volatility in business rates. This council is sustainable due to its range of income streams, including council tax, commercial property income, and fees and charges, and we have a proportionate approach to generating income. A couple of areas I will pick out. One is the uncertainty of the future of the new homes bonus, which stands at 1.6 million this year, and the climate change reserve, which I'm pleased to see we've been able to top back up by 200,000 back to its original figure of £1 million. Our capital programme is moving forward at pace, with Bingham Hub and the crematorium progressing with their build programme. And by the end of 2026, our capital investment will be over £27 million. without any need for external borrowing, which is an excellent achievement. All of this has been supported by a very able and competent financial team who have put together the excellent, prudent budget. Yeah, prudent is my favourite word at the moment. You'll hear it again in a minute. Whilst having to deal with numerous grant support work and now extra work on council tax support. I would personally like to thank Peter, Sarah and Rob, all their team and officers across the council for safely seeing us financially through the COVID storm and their helping business survival in Rushcliffe. Now to the important details. It is proposed to increase council tax by 2.4% to £2.4% to £150.93 at Band D. This equates to an increase of £3.57 per year at Band D. This will give an average Band D council tax increase of 7 pence a week. This budget means that Rushcliffe's council tax remains the lowest in Nottinghamshire and amongst the lowest in the country. For me, this is an excellent, prudent, careful budget to take us into the post-COVID era, enabling Rushcliffe Borough Council to continue its excellent service to residents and to deliver on our ambition to continue the growth of the borough. As it's the budget, I would like to read out the recommendations. We adopt the budget setting report and associated strategies 2023 to 27, including the transformation strategy and efficiency plan. We adopt the capital programme as set out in Appendix 4. We adopt the capital investment strategy Appendix 5. We set Rushcliffe's council tax for Band D at £150.93. We set the special expenses for West Bridgford, Ruddington and Keyworth, £53.91, £3.30, £3.82. We adopt the pay policy on Appendix 7. There's an extra one for the Cabinet that we give the Director of Finance and Corporate Services to make any minor amendments once the local government financial settlement is received. Although we spoke today and it's been received, and I don't think there are going to be any changes to this. I'm very happy to make the recommendation of the budget, Councillor Robinson, and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a seconder, Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. As usual, Councillor Moore has thoroughly highlighted some key points in the budget. And I think one of the things I'd particularly like to reiterate is that, as you said, we're in a very strong position that we're going forward with our capital programme with no borrowing. A couple of years ago, we were talking about having to borrow some money in order to create our ambitious target and redevelop Bingham Leisure Centre and bring forward the crematorium. And so it's really pleasing that despite all the challenges, we have managed to bring forward a budget that isn't going to involve any borrowing at a time when we can look around and see many other councils having to borrow money. So I think that's particularly pleasing to see. I too would like to thank Peter Linfield and his team for their sound financial management and the hard work that they've put in to achieve this very prudent budget proposal. So I would like to second the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Members of the Cabinet? I'd just like to echo those thanks, Mr. Linfield, to take that back. Appreciate it for this. I'm glad I saw the settlement today come in. If there's any huge surprises on that, really is that. I'm sure that you'll have time to review that to reflect it. I think, as Councillor Moore said, there is a huge amount of ambition in this budget and a lot of highlights, and we've been driving our ambitions, such as the £27 million of capital expenditure as well, and the fact that we haven't had to borrow any money, so we won't have those future interest payments going forward. So if there's no other comments, we'll take that to the vote and take the recommendation proposed by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Etheridge. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item number 8, South Nottinghamshire Homelessness and a Rough Sleeping Strategy. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. The incidence of individuals and families experiencing homelessness and rough sleeping across this borough is thankfully very low. But that's not to diminish its importance. And we know that for the people concerned, it's precarious and challenging conditions to be in. And we also know that circumstances can change. We can't afford to be complacent about the numbers across Rushcliffe. And it's important that we keep this situation under review and that we work with all the relevant partners to put in place measures to tackle the issue. So despite the low figures in Rushcliffe, we are still as a council obliged to publish a homelessness strategy every 5 years. We produce ours in conjunction with Gedling and Broxtowe Borough Councils as we face many common challenges, and we work closely with them to prevent and relieve homelessness and rough sleeping across South Nottinghamshire. The homelessness landscape has seen a number of recent changes, including new duties on councils and other public sector organisations, new acts of Parliament, including the Domestic Abuse Act, and other challenges, including, of course, COVID-19 pandemic and the implications on people of that. It's important that members are aware of our duties and how we intend to discharge them, and that Cabinet formally endorses the approach and the strategy. The 6 priority themes are set out at 4.7 in the paper, and the actions and targets that support them are set out in Appendix B. Progress against these targets will be reported to the South Nottinghamshire Interagency Forum, and they'll be reviewed quarterly. The financial implications are set out in paragraph 6.1, and I'd ask Cabinet to note that across the 3 boroughs in South Notts, there is over £700,000 of government money that has been secured to help deliver this strategy. As I said, I know the numbers affected across South Notts are relatively low, but ideally no one in Rushcliffe should be faced with homelessness or find themselves sleeping rough. So it's important that we do remain vigilant, and as a council, we have a proper strategy in place. So can I therefore recommend the strategy to Cabinet as per paragraph 2 in the paper, and ask that you approve the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a seconder, Councillor.
Thank you. Well, it is a due statutory requirement for the council to update this document, and that report just does that in the combined 3 council partnership by updating the compliances and with the change in legislation and available support. It addresses the emphasis to the increase and the new potential for rough sleeping, as no one in this country, for whatever reason, should be in a position to be forced into living rough. Having a place to live is a fundamental basic requirement in human life and well-being. I know some people do choose this way of life, so support and options must be in place, and the action plan focuses on that provision of prevention, intervention, recovery, which is defined in the report. So I do welcome the report as an essential document in keeping a strong partnership together, raising awareness to the challenges faced to both the homelessness and to the councils. So I'm happy to second the recommendation in Part A by approving the South Nottinghamshire Homeless and Rough Sleeping Strategy 2022-2027.
Any comments? No? Okay, take that straight to the vote then, please. Proposed by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Eames. Those in favour of accepting the recommendations? That's carried unanimously. Okay, moving on to item 9, Disabled Facilities Grant Policy. Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Another statutory responsibility we have. I'm bringing this to Cabinet for approval. This is the Disabled Facilities Grant Policy. The aim of the grant is to enable people to receive assistance to remain in their own homes as long as possible, which is better for them as individuals, and it also reduces the demand on other services such as the NHS, residential care, in community services and so on. This revised policy aligns with the Nottinghamshire-wide policy and will be adopted by other districts and boroughs of the county. The provision of such grants is mandatory and are provided via Nottinghamshire County Council and the Government's Better Care Fund. The reasons for the revised policy are set out in paragraph 4 of the paper. Essentially, the upper limit of the mandatory grant is 30,000 and is set nationally. The key change now will be to increase the upper limit on discretionary grants for major adaptations from 10,000 to 20,000, increasing the overall grant available to 50,000. Any grants awarded form a charge on the property for a period of 10 years where the resident has a legal interest in that property. The other key revisions to the policy are set out in paragraph 4.8. The aim of the changes is to ensure a consistent approach across the whole of Nottinghamshire and the provision of such services is a legal requirement on our part. I therefore hope Cabinet can support the proposed changes and approve the recommendation of paragraph 2 as set out in the paper. Thank you.
Very much. Have a seconder, Councillor English.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to be able to endorse this document and being brought up to date with the fact that the grant amounts are being increased to reflect the increased inspiring costs, construction labour and materials for disabled adaptations, which assist residents to be able to live independently in their own homes. Taking away the 5-year term for the document allows it to be updated when necessary. I trust it will be regularly reviewed by the Director of Neighbourhoods with recommended delegated powers. So I do second the recommendation, A and B in block 2.
I think the key thing there really is, as you said, that the pressures on hospitals, etc., is absolutely key to support disabled people stay in the house as long as possible. Is a very, very key objective of this and very relevant but in today's environment. So take that as recommendations forward by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor English. All those in favour? Very much. Okay, the affordable housing SPD. Councillor Edwin, please.
Thank you. The affordable housing supplementary planning document is an important part of local plan, our local plan. And this recommendation for us tonight was first considered by the Local Development Framework Group in March last year, and then put out for public consultation, which resulted in a few revisions, and those revisions were approved by the Local Development Framework Group in December last year, with a recommendation to put those this report to Cabinet. Within this report, we define the levels of affordable housing that we want delivered across the borough, and we strive to achieve up to 30% of affordable housing in most places. In Eastleigh, Keyworth and Bingham, we have targets of 20% affordable housing, and in Cotgrave 10%. And these lower targets reflect the fact that there are previously higher levels of affordable housing available in those areas, and would keep a good balance of affordable housing. As well as facilitating building affordable houses, you must also ensure that they are affordable. Within the recommendation, this has been addressed by amending the discounts required on designated affordable housing for sale or part ownership in line with recent house price data, and using a salary multiplier of 4 times salary to help us determine the affordability, to make sure that our residents can afford to get onto the housing ladder as first-time buyers. Of course, there are also houses to rent as well through designated providers within our affordable housing percentages. All of the proposed changes to the document made throughout the consultation period are detailed in Appendix 2. And so the proposal is recommended to Cabinet, that Cabinet A approves the proposed revisions to the draft housing supplementary planning document. B approves the adoption of the draft affordable housing supplementary planning document. And C delegates authority to the Director, Development and Economic Growth, in consultation with the Cabinet portfolio holder for business and growth, to make any necessary final minor textual, graphical, presentational changes required to the SPD prior to publication.
Very much. Have a second, Councillor Moore.
Now, this is an important document which will give clear guidance to anyone, including councillors, involved in the delivery of affordable homes. It should assist in clarifying some of the interpretations of affordable housing, both in larger conurbations and in rural areas. I'm very happy to second this recommendation.
Any comments at all? So I think it's a very important part of our housing policy going forward. I'm very proud of it. We have to build more affordable houses in the district of Nottinghamshire. And this is obviously key, as you said, in terms of guidance going forward. as we see both sides running out there. Make sure in terms of the affordability to provide this housing to that second part. One question, is it still Metropolitan Waterloo that they provide us?
Platform still, they've changed it.
They changed the name to Metropolitan Thames Valley.
It's Metropolitan, two major providers that provide business there, so the relationship. Excellent. So recommendations as proposed then by Councillor Penvin, seconded by Councillor Norton. All those in favour? Okay, moving to item 11 is the One Golf Course Strategic Review. Councillor.
Thank you again. So this is the report provides an update from the previous report to Cabinet in March 2021, where we considered the future of Edwarton Golf Course and looked for ways forward in looking after this. I think it's important to recognise that it is one of our key assets within West Bridgford, and it's important that we manage this asset for the future. As the recommendation shows in paragraph 4.12, usage of the golf course has been in decline for over a decade and leading more recently to annual losses from the running of this facility. More recently, however, post-lockdown, there has been a revival of usage and the facility now more or less breaks even, which is to be welcomed. It has to be recognised that the golf course has long been a site designated as a potential development site, but this must be balanced against the green space that the course provides in an expanding urban environment. In the last report, Cabinet approved a technical assessment of the site to establish if the development strategy was feasible. And the result of this identified the need to keep the site with some golf activity and propose a possible enhancement to the offering through the development of a driving range. And this was also endorsed by the Community Scrutiny Group. The Par 3 course has been identified as suitable for possible redevelopment, but again, this must be balanced against our total forecast housing supply, which exceeds our requirements through until 2038. So this recommendation before us effectively safeguards this site from medium to long-term development, whilst continuing to bring forward proposals to improve the current golf and leisure offering that the site provides. So contrary to headlines some may have seen in the local press over the weekend, we will not be recommending the golf course should be redeveloped for housing. So I'd therefore like to propose the recommendation set out in part 2 of the report, and it is recommended that the Cabinet acknowledges the detailed technical assessments that have been undertaken for the Par 3 golf course, which conclude that the site could represent a good option for the residential development subject to planning, although the Cabinet direction is that it is retained at the present time as an important community facility. B acknowledges that there is likely to be sufficient housing supply in Rushcliffe to 2038 without the need to allocate this site within the open strategic plan, but it can be included in the pipeline of potential sites for future consideration as part of the local plan process, should the requirement for further sites arise to be considered concurrently with the site as a community facility. C endorses further detailed design assessments for the driving range business case over the next period to establish if a standalone driving range could be delivered to provide a betterment to the golfing offer on site. And D explores the opportunities for the ecological improvements and biodiversity net gain on the main 9-hole golf course through improvement management and partnership working in line with the Council climate change strategy objectives.
Have a seconder.
Thank you. Well, I think it's commendable the council commissioned a report into the best use of the golf course. which has evaluated all the options. This area is of great community and ecological value. By keeping the golfing facilities, having a driving range, and proposed wilding of certain areas, protects it from the site from additional housing, which Rushcliffe is already providing the required quota in its 5-year supply. I'm sure the residents of Walton will be fully supportive in the approving of this recommendation. I will encourage them to continue to increase the usage of the facilities there, and recognising it as an important community asset for the future. So I'm happy to second the recommendations in 2 as A to B.
Very much. Any other comments? Councillor Frederick.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm really pleased that we've got this paper to cabinet, and as both councillors have mentioned, the borough already has grant housing in excess of the targets set for it by government, and I think it's absolutely right and proper that we challenge every site for housing in that context, and that we're clear that there are other needs the borough has, and particularly that we take account of our climate change commitments and the ecological impact of the development of any sites. I'm very pleased to see that recognised in this paper.
Absolutely, totally agree. I think, as Councillor Edwin said, this is an absolutely key asset, not just for Rushcliffe, it's a key asset for the whole borough. It's in terms of its size and its usage and things, strategically, it is very important. I don't think we should apologise for this sort of review on all our assets to make sure that they are being used for the best interest of the taxpayers in the context of demands along this borough. I think this independent report was very, very worthwhile in terms of the outcomes that came out of it, as has been highlighted by councillors tonight in the context of its community use against the housing as well. So this reasonable assurance really now, and we have 2038 certainly give the golfers there, and people use it for health reasons as well. It's in the midst of some huge development, 1,000 houses that go up around Walton in the future, and Gamston as well. So I think it's really good we've looked at this about the right way. My decision now being proposed tonight that we should retain it as a community facility. But obviously we have to also bear in mind as we go forward, be mindful of the housing requirements. It's good news that we do have that to supply community. We can certainly know that will keep us at least until 2030. Any other comments at all? Okay. Let's move the recommendations as set out by Councillor Edwin and seconded by Councillor. All those in favour? In terms of the next item, it's the planning committee pilot. Councillor Edwin.
Thank you again, Councillor Robinson. In June 2021, Cabinet approved a planning committee trial to hold meetings commencing at 2:30 and running until 6 p.m. with a possible extension to 6:30. And we assured full council the trial would be monitored to assess the impact on achieving a robust planning committee structure, which is key for the borough's reputation, as well as it is an important semi-judicial process. The proposals were originally made in the light of a review of best practice around many other councils. And at the time, some concerns were raised over the impact of an afternoon meeting on the process of the committee and the availability of participants, both councillors and other interested parties, such as developers, agents, applicants, and objectors or supporters of applications. We've run the pilot now for 6 months, and the changes can be summarised. Pilot changes can be summarised as actions to improve the working of the committee, with changes to officer presentations and encouraging councillors to raise points of clarification earlier in the process. And secondly, the improvement is designed to move the timing of the meeting from evening starts to an afternoon start. And it was anticipated that participants would be less likely to suffer from information overload or fatigue, as I think many people have witnessed in past meetings of the planning committee in the evenings. We also look for more emphasis to be placed on ensuring that ward councillor objections had sound planning principles to support their objections, and that consultee comments should be made possible within a timely manner. The rationale for all of these improvements is clearly explained in fact paragraph 4.2 and its subsections. I think we should recognise that there has been mixed feedback, with some concerns still expressed regarding the availability of councillors for afternoon meetings and the impact that this may have on the diversity of the group. And because of the mixed feedback, we promised that we would have a survey of user groups, and that was commissioned, asking questions on agents, architects, planning committee members and regular subs, applicants, objectors and supporters who wish to speak at the meetings, and officers attending the committee. Within that group, 75 questionnaires were sent out and 46 were returned. Of these, 39 preferred the new start time of 2:30, with 7 preferring the previous 6:30 start. In the light of the very positive feedback, I would like to propose the recommendation, and it is recommended that A, the temporary changes implemented during the planning pilot period are adopted, including a meeting time of 2:30 to 6 p.m, with an option for a half-hour extension. And B, the monitoring officer amend the constitution to give effect to the performance arrangements. I was also wondering if it is possible to add as an addendum to recommendation A, that the half-hour extension, the purpose of which is to ensure that once the planning application is started with the committee, it should be finished in that session. Suitable wording.
Do I have a second? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Edwin's covered the paper very comprehensively, so all I would like to do is second that. I agree it's time to formalise the new timings for the planning committee. Do understand and appreciate, as we all do, the strength of feeling amongst some members about these changes, and it clearly represents a challenge in terms of timing and commitments for some. By the same token, for those where an afternoon is difficult, sometimes an evening is difficult, and it's going to be impossible to satisfy everybody in that regard. But what is clear from the outcome of the assessment of people's views is that the vast majority of our customers, and that's the people that we are serving by having a planning committee, the new times are much preferable, and I think we need to go with that. And frankly, having sat through some planning committees that have gone on until 10:30 in the evening after a full day's work, it really cannot be the best environment for members, officers or applicants to ensure that the applications are given proper consideration when so late in the evening. Therefore, I fully support the recommendations as set out.
Thank you very much. I think whatever change in time that you have these meetings, you're going to discriminate against somebody in terms of their work, their own commitments, and that is taken a second. There's absolutely no way you can best for everybody to fulfil that. So I think the process we've gone through here, on the pilot, which I stood at full council, and I said that would be fully reviewed. I think we further strengthened that with the survey we've actually done. Delighted that Councillor Edwin stressed that came from many interested parties, not just committee members, but also residents, agents, and obviously officers and all stakeholders in such an important forum. And I think the feedback was actually provided. Quite surprised now that feedback came back in terms of its numbers, which sort of strengthened the view and recommendation that's been made tonight. But I absolutely accept that it can be inconvenient for some people. I think we have to go by the greater majority to make sure that democracy is not be such as seems to be done, such as the planning committee. As a result of surveys that have been done there, the feedback I also think that the last 6 months I've attended meetings myself. Again, I think they've done very well. The appointment that Councillor Brennan made, I sat on planning committee for about 6 years, and so it didn't get to 10:30, but there were some incredibly challenging and demanding for people in terms of the clarity of mind. There's absolutely no question that people do operate a lot better and more efficient. So taking all those points on board, recommendations are set out by Councillor Edibing, seconded by Councillor Brennan. All those in favour of those recommendations? I should say with the amendments. Yeah, so carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, at this point, I need to just make an announcement. I don't think he's put the position. It's disappeared anyway.
It is.
He's just bored.
Those afternoon.
I'll still read this out for the record, so the public to move under the regulation 21(1)(b) of the local authority executive arrangements system England regulations 2000. The public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the local